Hi everybody, I'm back. I'm finally reporting on my first LARP event, which I went to November 11th to 13th, I think it was, or 11th. Yeah, I think it was the 11th to the 13th. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that kind of middle-ish of November. Um, so I went to a LARP called Legacies, and it's based out of Washington State. They play all of their games out of state parks. So that's where we were. We were at Millersvania State Park, which in the game is known as the town of Fortnite. And so the idea with your backstory is that you have to have you don't have to, but you create a reason for why your character is in Fortnite. And in the case of my character, she's a traveling bard and healer, and so she travels from town to town doing her work, and generally she likes to find one spot to hole up for winter, which November being winter, um, it seemed like a good time to start her in the game. So she arrives in Fortnite and she's kind of checking out the tavern. Friday night we arrived. The drive down was excruciating. Traffic was really, really bad getting into Olympia. And so when we finally did get there, and after an adventure where my husband locked the keys in the car trunk, and we had to call a locksmith, and it was. We finally made it to the park, um, but not without a few obstacles and adventures on the way. Um, so we get there, we get all set up. I've been working on my makeup in the car, and I finish up once we get there. And then we get changed, and we hop over to plot so that my husband can get his makeup done because he doesn't have any makeup for his character, who is a Canid. Um, Now, okay, so the characters we played, my husband was playing a Canid who was a like a fox Canid named Firetail, and I was playing a dragoon named Leonara Knox, and Leo for short, because a lot of people couldn't remember Leonara, and I knew they weren't going to be able to. So she was very much from the start. She was very much Leo. Leo's fine. Leo for short's good. Um, so we'd created our characters. Luckily, we'd submitted everything to plot because we literally made it there like by the skin of our teeth as game was starting at 8 o'clock on Friday night. Um, for us, not a lot happened Friday night. There was apparently a few little things going on, but we missed a lot of what happened Friday night. Um, so we met a few people. I met some people in the tavern, and my husband kind of sat and wrote stories and eyeballed people because that's kind of what his character's like. He's very suspicious of people. So, um, and then Saturday rolls around, and Saturday morning I make some breakfast and I feed us both, and then Saturday, Saturday was very eventful for my character, and later in the day for my husband's character. So this creature comes up out of the lake, and it turns out that it's a manifestation of the lake itself, and it is infected with a disease that's been plaguing the land, and a corruption. And this has been an ongoing plot line for several months from the sounds of it. Corruption has been a big issue in the game. So my character is very curious, and she goes and inspects this lake creature while my husband's character is fast asleep in his cabin. Well, technically, my husband is fast asleep in his cabin. He wasn't in character while he was asleep. Um, so she goes to inspect this creature, and she's watching as they start preparing a ritual to help clear its corruption. Um, and there's like there was on and off stuff that going on. She very much bonded with a character named Sachiko, who is from Nippon, which is I guess the game's version of Japan. And Sachiko runs a tea house in town out of one of the cabins at the park. Um, so she so she and Sashiko bonded a little bit, and there was things going on throughout the day. There was accusations. A group of ogres attacked the healing house and blamed the humans for the corruption, which is also causing problems in the Goblin Wastes, which are just outside of Fortnite. Um, So yeah, so a lot of stuff happened. For me, it didn't get really active till kind of the later evening. There was a few encounters with plant monsters throughout the day, and oh, yeah. So there was all these plant monsters attacking, and they were like essentially like sentient blackberry bushes that were trying to kill everybody. And besides the fact that one person decided to try and eat a blueberry and ended up having one of these creatures grow out of her stomach, um, they were burning them, and we were sitting around the fire while they were burning the plant monsters. And this little fey creature flies up to my character because she's bright purple and silver scales with purple hair and horns. So he decided that she was colorful and gaudy and interesting, and he's this little fey creature, and it was a Kindle with wings on a stick. But suspension of disbelief, little fairy flies up to my character and starts like freaking getting in her face and hassling her, and she's like, get it off of me. Um, so he says he has a mission for her, and she needs to choose four other adventurers to accompany her on this mission that someone has taken something from him and we need to help him retrieve it. So she kind of reluctantly agrees to help this strange little creature who's flying around in her face. And so and a bunch of people volunteered. She doesn't even have to pick people. A bunch of people volunteered. And so they followed him blindly into the woods. You know, and Sachiko actually came with us. Sachiko as a character is a pacifist. She doesn't fight. She has no fighting skills, so she actually got along really well with Leonara, who is very much a like don't hurt it if it's not hurting anyone kind of person. Um, so, anyways, so she and Sachiko were discussing perhaps we should not be returning this item to the Fae. Maybe it doesn't belong to him. What if he's trying to trick us? We had all kinds of like concerns about what was going to happen once we actually retrieved this mask for the Fae. But when we actually got to the site where he was looking for his item, it turns out someone had locked it in an ironwood box, and of course the Fae are very allergic to iron. Um, so we retrieved it. We had a luckily we had a like lock picking person with us who was able to pick the lock on this ironwood box and get him his mask back. And it was full of like gems and little trinkets and for a summoning ritual, um, which it became apparent that someone had been summoning something here. And so we got the Fae to explain to us that they had summoned him and they wanted him to go investigate the Goblin Wastes. And the Goblin Wastes are very dangerous. People don't come out of the Goblin Wastes alive. So, you know, being a Fae and interested in his own safety and health, he said, hell no, I'm not stupid. And so they tried to force him by taking his mask and putting it in this box, which he, I guess, was supposed to be delivering to another Fae. And when he continued to say no, they were like, screw it. So they tried to summon something else. And it turned out that they had summoned a demon when they were intending to summon a Fae, and the demon had broken through the summoning circle and whisked this summoner and his apprentice away. So there was some stuff with that. We went and read some of the paperwork that we found in the chest, and we divvied up the treasure. And then, so we after that we head back to the tavern, and all of a sudden people start talking about this spirit they're seeing of a canid, a fox, and my character's like, what? Now throughout the kind of the early evening, we kept getting attacked by gnolls. And it turned out that these are not gnolls. What were they? Kobolds. And it turns out that these kobolds had snuck into our cabin and brutally murdered my husband's character. Because we didn't have a lock. So we have learned our lesson. We are purchasing a lock for our next event. Because in game, everything is in game, except for like, I think the kitchen and the plot cabins. So, so yeah, so he was brutally murdered. He had to come find someone to resurrect him. And after that, he actually started having fun. He wasn't really enjoying himself prior to being brutally murdered. And after that, he got more involved. But So the two major events that were happening kind of in the early evening were that spirits were attacking, or not attacking, shades were coming and they were possessing people, sharing their message and leaving. And my character got it into her head, and this was very unusual based on her character history. She's very, I wouldn't say self-serving, but she has a strong sense of self-preservation, and she doesn't do stuff that isn't going to help her. But for some reason, being around these lovely people in Fortnite just made her desire to help people. So she decided that she was going to let these shades possess her, with the idea that if they had a willing host, someone who wasn't fighting them, maybe they'd be able to spread more of their message and find peace. And it turned out Sachiko had the same idea. So she and Sachiko are standing outside the tavern, allowing these shades to possess her, literally reaching out to them and allowing themselves to be possessed. And they spread the message of the shades. And unfortunately, there was very little that they were able to do. The shades were not resting after they weren't giving more information to a willing host than they were to an unwilling host. So it wasn't very effective, but it was worth a shot, right? And again, the other one was that the kobolds were attacking. Now, later in the evening, this group went out to speak with, I guess there's the spirits that they've been dealing with, and this is part of the ongoing storyline. And I'm not going to get too much into it because my character really didn't get too involved in it. But she did get involved in the ogre battle as a healer. And something that I actually managed to do this entire weekend, and I'll discuss it a little more later, is that my character never actually hit anybody with her sword. She never used a weapon. She never fired an arrow. She never hit anybody with her sword. All she did was heal, which apparently is an extremely difficult thing to do, especially at your first game. So anyways, so these ogres were attacking. There was two different sites that the ogres were attacking, so we split into two groups. My character went up to the farm to rescue this man and his family, and had met Caldwin, who was this very lovely, slightly hyperactive dragoon, who she is a little bit fond of now. She thinks Caldwin's pretty sweet. So she went up to the barn with the first group, and then once everything had been settled and they'd killed all the ogres at the barn and they'd rescued this man's family, they decided to join up with the other group who were still fighting ogres up at another farm. And so we pattered over to this other farm, and it turns out that there's like huge numbers of ogres still coming and hitting this group, and they were hitting them on the road and all sorts of stuff. So we deal with that, and then the whole group comes back to where the temple is in town, and Sachiko is sitting by herself at the temple, and she's drunk. And part of Sachiko's character, which I learned when we found her drunk, is that when she's drunk, she forgets how to speak Alban, which is the common tongue in Legacies. So nobody has any idea. She's patting the temple, and apparently saying temple in the Nippon language, which is Japanese. But you couldn't prove it by my character, who only speaks Alban. So she gets herself forced. So she's all drunk and kind of not very helpful. And so they hear a shout away from the temple. And they look at me and they're like, hey, you protect Sachiko. And I'm like, me? I don't really fight. Like, I'm a healer. Why are you leaving me to protect her? This is a really bad idea. And they're like, well, just yell if you see anything coming. And so I'm like, okay. And so they bail off into the woods to fight these ogres that are attacking on in another part of town. And I see a shadow coming through the woods. And I'm like, what's going on? So I'm like, hello? And we hear a growl. And then it charges. And it's an ogre, of course. So Sachiko screams just before the ogre cleaves her down. And I turn and start to run towards the group that has left us, going, help, 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 we're under attack! And I get cut down as well. and they cleave for 130, I guess. And my armor was in my cabin, and I had a body of 50. So I was out. I was down to 0. I was bleeding out. Luckily, they hadn't gotten very far, and they were able to get me back up before I even hit death count. I was only in bleeding out. So, yeah. Um, that was fun. So, yeah. So Sunday night was pretty busy. Nothing really happened. Kind of. Or Saturday night, sure. Saturday was pretty crazy. Pretty active. The only thing that was kind of a downside was that um, everyone kept mistaking my character for half Fae. Um, Dragoon requirements only require scales for their racial makeup, and 90% of the time, they don't even have to have their own racial makeup. They can pick any other racial makeup and be that character because they have the ability of transformation. So 90% of the time, they're not even in their own racial makeup. Caldwin and Leo are the only ones who actively choose to wear their scales on a regular basis. But I had read that dragoons could also have horns, tails, ridges, wings, whatever, right? It just depends on how pure their dragon heritage is. So because I was writing a character who had kind of a more pure dragoon heritage, I wrote her with horns and scales and all that kind of stuff. So I had like gems to mark out some of the scales, as well as like a fishnet scale pattern that I had created on her skin, um, and a pair of really nice horns that I had handmade. Um, so she kept getting mistaken for half Fae, which she was kind of offended by because she wasn't overly fond of the Fae to begin with, and then she kept getting mistaken for one. So, I'm actually going to not be playing her again for a while. I am keeping the character history and description and everything and the design because I did like playing her. It wasn't for me as far as something that I want to do all the time. And I wanted that main character. And one of the things you're allowed to do in your first 3 games is completely rewrite your character using the skill points you have. And I wanted to rewrite using those 100 skill points because on secondary characters you only get 50, and I needed the 100 for the character concept I had. And whereas I could easily rewrite Leo as a 50 skill point character as a starting point, because I've decided that since she didn't fight anyways, I'm going to write her as a pacifist. She is not going to have any fighting abilities. Um, I think I even took away her lockpicking abilities because I just didn't see a point in her having them. It doesn't match up with her character history. So it worked out well. So, shh, 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 shh. So, anyways, baby's starting to fuss, and I'm getting into the 18-minute mark of this video, but I did want to share with you guys kind of how my first LARP went. I know this is like a crappy webcam video, but I'm super stoked. Love doing it. We'll definitely be going back again. And I am going to attach a picture I took with my phone at the end of this video just so you can kind of see what my makeup looked like for this character. And then I'd like to go back in December, but I think it's probably going to be January before I get to go back now because I do have to work the LARP weekend, and I've been having trouble getting coworkers to take the shifts for me. So, yeah. So, wish me luck. I will talk to you guys later. And, yeah, you're awesome. Bye.